Hey there, Ari here from the Tech Buyers Guru, and I've got another PC market update for you here on the channel today. This is another in a long running series of videos I've done this year, giving you insights into some of the biggest and some of the smaller names in the PC industry, kind of to give you a flavor for what they've been up to, the newest products they've released, and maybe where they're going in the future. Now, this time around, I'm bringing you two really big names, Cooler Master and Corsair. Frankly, these are probably known to every single one of you and are probably the two biggest names in the PC industry, bar none. They've both been around since the 1990s. That's a pretty long time, and that means they've been able to conquer a lot of different markets, and frankly both of them have defined specific markets, and I'll go over that in this video. Now, because they're so big and they have huge marketing departments, they're both very well-oiled machines. They don't let anything leak. I don't have any surprises, any secrets. I'm not going to reveal anything they haven't revealed themselves. So if you're looking for, like, rumor mill stuff, I don't have it because they don't give that to me, and I don't blame them. They're big. They can handle that themselves. So I'm going to start with Cooler Master here. I've got the MA612 Stealth ARGB cooler that I'm going to be featuring in an upcoming shootout. Now, this is a 120 millimeter class cooler with dual 120 millimeter sickle flow fans. It's offset to clear RAM slots. It's got 6 heat pipes, and it comes in around 90 bucks. Now, one of the really interesting things about this cooler, and I give Cooler Master props for innovating, is that they have a reverse flow fan here. So what this allows you to do is have the rotor on the outside, and it means the ARGB projects out and back into your case rather than into the heatsink like every other manufacturer does when they equip dual ARGB fans on their heatsink. So this is a really cool concept from an aesthetic point of view. We'll see how it performs. I have no doubt that Cooler Master had in mind the NH212A from Noctua, which is now around 110 bucks. Very similar layout and size. So we'll see how it does in my upcoming shootout. Now, in terms of other products, of course, they have the Hyper 212, which has defined budget air cooling for decades. I think it's been around since like 2005 or 2006. I've never actually officially reviewed a Hyper 212, although I did once own it, one of the original ones. And at this point, I think the Hyper 212 is kind of a nameplate and something that people just refer to as like a reference budget cooler. And so it's still, I think, the #1 cooler in the world. Competitors have clearly been able to outdo that cooler, even probably for the price. But, Cooler Master has that name and people just know it and they associate it with a good cooler for the price. And it is a good cooler for the price. I will be doing a budget cooler roundup probably early next year. And if I do that, I will probably ask Cooler Master for one of their lower end coolers, something in the $40 price range. So it'll probably be some iteration of the Hyper 212. Now, in terms of other products that Cooler Master has been working on this year, they came out with a new line of power supplies, the MWE version 2. These are gold rated power supplies rated at 650, 750, and 850 watts. And they've got great reviews recently from really respected outlets. Now, I don't do power supply reviews myself. I use them in my systems, but I don't do the technical reviews. So I trust others to do all that stuff. And Cooler Master's kind of laid low in the power supply market for a number of years, but they came back with a vengeance here with these well-priced, gold-rated power supplies that perform really well. So, they probably had to find the right OEM to work with to get the great, great value and great performance that people would expect with a Cooler Master nameplate. So that's other news. Of course, they've been pretty active in peripherals for the past couple of years. A lot of manufacturers have expanded into keyboards, mice, and headsets. I think that these are pretty high margin products. And as some people have told me in the industry, most of these are all manufactured in just a couple of facilities in China. So it's probably pretty easy to just kind of say, hey, we want to throw our hat in the ring. Give us like a unique design for our name, our brand, and we'll sell it, and we'll see if we can outcompete or outprice or outdo the other folks out there. So, little tidbit about Cooler Master: they used to work really closely with HyperX. They would use HyperX RAM in all of their showcases at conventions, and then they started kind of competing with HyperX in the peripherals market, particularly like headsets and keyboards and mice. And at that point, HyperX, I think, basically said, hey, or I don't know who it was, either Cooler Master or HyperX said, yeah, we can't really work together anymore because we're competitors suddenly. So that is kind of a nuance when it comes to big names getting into different markets. Suddenly they've become enemies with former friends, and it's too bad that happens because, of course, every PC needs a lot of different components in it, and no single name, not even Corsair, manufactures everything inside of a PC. So I hope that these guys can get along even as they start to compete in each other's markets. So Cooler Master, known for cooling and cases. I use an H500P mesh case. It's sitting over there in the corner behind my desk. I don't drag it out anymore. I did feature it in a couple of videos on the channel a couple of years back, but then I decided, it's just too much work and I don't want anything to get messed up. That's my work system. So it's gonna basically sit permanently behind my desk, but I love it. I've loved it ever since I reviewed it back in 2017. And basically Cooler Master's done nothing in that market for 4 years. And it's not that the H500P mesh is bad. It's actually really good, but I'm a little surprised they haven't tried to come out with something new in the $150 to $200 price range, kind of that high-end case market. They have certainly been busy in the ITX market. They came out with the NR200 and basically defined high-end budget ITX cases. It's almost like hard to comprehend exactly how much they changed that market, because for a long time you had budget ITX cases and then you had high-end boutique cases at really high prices like $200, $250. And then Cooler Master comes in with an $80 case that looks and performs and was the size of a lot of these boutique cases. And they basically just changed the industry forever. I'm sure that all those boutique manufacturers didn't appreciate it entirely. Cooler Master came in with its heft. It's basically, stomped on all these smaller companies and said, we're going to manufacture this. We're going to probably come up with pretty small margins, but we want to take over the market. And that's what they did. And NR200 has been an amazingly good seller for Cooler Master. They now recently came out with the NR200 Max, which has a power supply and a cooler installed in a slightly different layout inside. And then they also have their colorways NR200, so these kind of colorful versions of the NR200. When Cooler Master puts its mind to it, it can take over a market. And they may be doing that now with that new series of MWE power supplies. I mean, these are priced so well, like $95 to $125, like well under their competition from Corsair and others. So we'll see what Cooler Master does there. Now, in terms of liquid coolers, interestingly, I don't think that Cooler Master has ever been very serious about high-end liquid coolers. I've tested some of their liquid coolers. I've found them to be decent. And they're generally well priced, but they're not fantastic coolers. Maybe it's something that Cooler Master decided, hey, just like in the air cooling space with our Hyper 212, we've been so successful at the budget end, we'll do budget liquid coolers too. It's possible they could come out with some high-end coolers. Maybe I've missed them, but from my point of view, they're not that competitive at the high end of the liquid cooling market. So with all that said, again, Cooler Master does so many things, and they do a lot of things really well, and some things, not so well. But that's okay. For a big company, they can make mistakes and bounce back. And I anticipate that they will come out with another high-end case soon. The case market is hurting right now because of freight costs and tariffs in the US. So it's not a great time to come out with a new high-end case because you have to price it higher than you'd like and higher than a lot of consumers would expect it to be. So maybe they're sitting on that for a while. Maybe they have a new high-end design that they're just holding until the market is right and ready for a new case at a good price. So I'm hoping they will do that because the H500P mesh is one of my favorite cases ever, but it needs an update. All right, moving on Corsair. If there's any company that does even more than Cooler Master, it's Corsair. Started in 1994 as a RAM manufacturer, and then slowly kind of expanded further and further into different markets and defined these markets all along. How about power supplies? With their AX and HX series, they basically defined premium power supplies. I think they were the first to ship their power supplies in a velvet bag. This was kind of mind-blowing that a power supply could be viewed as something kind of luxurious. It's like high-end. It's not just something that, you plug cables into and then forget about. They made it something desirable, and I give them credit. They made great power supplies, and not only that, they really pushed the industry forward. And fantastic. I mean, the perfect example is the AX1600i. This was released in 2017. Corsair said, we're going to make the best power supply ever. This is probably the best example of Corsair coming in and dominating a market at the extremely high end. But they've dominated the market in other ways as well. Of course, RAM, that's pretty easy. Vengeance, I mean, that's synonymous with RAM. If you're looking for RAM and you type in like RAM, Corsair is probably going to come up first. This is one of their newer kits, the ARGB Pro SL. This is technically their low profile RGB RAM, but it's not that low profile. It's 44 millimeters tall, whereas their LPX line of truly low profile stuff is 33 millimeters. Now I'm going to be using this kit in my cooler roundup, and I'm going to specifically use 4 sticks. This is a 4-stick kit, so you can get a feel for how the cooler clearance works for a lot of these coolers. Now this one's offset, so this should have perfect clearance, but some of the coolers will actually overhang this RAM and may cause some problems. People always ask me that about air coolers. Does it block that first RAM slot? Well, I'm going to be showing that to you using this RAM, which is a relatively, I think, standard height. Again, I don't think this is low profile, even though it's marketed that way, but it is really good looking RAM, and I'm going to use it because I think it stands in for a lot of different brands in terms of its design. Now, there's of course liquid cooling. Wow. Okay, if Cooler Master Hyper 212 is synonymous with air cooling, the Hydro series is synonymous with liquid cooling. They basically created the all-in-one cooler with the Hydro H100i, and they've used that nameplate over and over again ever since that first model was released. And they've improved it a ton since then. I did review one of the original H100i's, and it was loud, really, really loud. And the performance was decent, but it wasn't fantastic. These new models are quite a bit better. And I featured this model on the channel recently. I did an installation of it on AM4, and I also used it as a test bed for a bunch of radiator fans because it is the best-selling radiator on the market. I mean, bar none, right? The H100i. So that's why I chose this one, because so many people use it. I thought it was very representative. I also recently reviewed the H150i. That's the 360 millimeter model. It plays kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of 360 millimeter models, but that's not bad. You know, again, Corsair isn't always going to be the #1 in every roundup, but they're going to have a place, and they're going to have a product that can compete. And that's to their credit. You know, they have so many different products, and they come out at different times, and maybe, you know, there's going to be a new iteration of H150i that's going to beat all the competitors out there. So I trust that Corsair has the R&D ability to come out and beat all the greatest all-in-ones right now. But again, they define the market. You got to give them credit for that. Another example of a product that Corsair released that defined a market was the K70 mechanical keyboard. I mean, nobody had used mechanical keyboards, particularly for gaming, until the K70 hit the market. And when they hit and people tried that out, it was mind-blowing. And then every manufacturer came along and tried to compete, including Cooler Master, and tried to repeat that success. The K70 is one of the best sellers, probably still the best-selling mechanical keyboard line in history. So again and again, Corsair really hits it out of the park with their products. But there's one area where they stumbled, and that was in the case market. You know, in the early 2000s, they came out with some of their first cases, and they did a really good job. Carbide, graphite, obsidian, these were the best gaming cases on the market. If you wanted a gaming case, the first ones you'd consider were from Corsair. But then they kind of lost their footing. The competition caught up, and Corsair tried a bunch of different things, lots of different designs, lots of different themes, a lot of different nameplates, and it got pretty confusing. And frankly, Corsair admitted that. And what they did last year was they rebooted their entire case lineup, their whole product stack. They came out with the 4000D and X in September 2020, and then the 5000D and X in January of 2021. I actually reviewed it on the channel when it was released. And then they came out with the 7000D and X. That's their largest model. Now these three cases are practically clones of each other, just different sizes, like small, medium, large, or frankly, medium, large, and really large. But if they create like a 6000 or an 8000, I'd love them to change the design a little bit. And one thing I've told them repeatedly is they should come out with an airflow case with RGB fans installed. It's, I think, really odd that they haven't released this. They have their airflow cases, and then they have the RGB cases, and the two shall not meet. And maybe this is their strategy. Maybe they said, you know, our competitors, including Cooler Master, by the way, have so many cases that have mesh fronts with RGB fans. You know, Leon Lee has that, Fantex has that. And maybe Corsair's like, you know what, we're not going to play that game. We're going to do something different. And the 4000D Airflow has been an extremely hot seller. So maybe it made sense not to give it RGB. Maybe they were tapping into that angst about RGB. Like, I hate that, you know, too much RGB, like RGB vomit. I don't want that. And That may have been their strategy, but I think a lot of people still like RGB. I personally think it's all right. You know, I have some RGB cases I featured on the channel a number of times. I mean, my personal case has RGB in it. So I think they should combine airflow with RGB. I don't think there's any reason you can't do that, even if your competitors are doing that. Just do it better. In terms of other products from Corsair, they're fans. And another product of theirs defined a market, the ML120. When that came out, everybody had to have one. I bought some myself. I mean, it was like, wow, a super high-end fan. Like, it's never existed before. Of course, over time, competitors caught up, and I've tested the ML120 a number of times on the channel. It's decent. It's not great compared to current fans on the market. And what I am going to be doing in a long delayed video, I promised it really at the beginning of 2021. I'm going to be lucky if I get it in at the end of 2021, is my ARGB case fan roundup. Now, I do have the SP Elites on hand. This is one of Corsair's newest fans. It's really tailor-made for cases. It's not really designed for coolers. It's what they're using in their 4000, 5000 series cases. So I look forward to testing that and seeing how it performs. I think it could be a real contender. And it's actually fairly affordable too. So you'll see that coming up on the channel right after I finish my next cooler roundup. These roundups take a lot of time. So in the meantime, you'll see videos like this. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, post them down below. And in particular, if there are any products you'd like to see me review from either of these companies, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see what I can do. So, as always, I'm Ari from the Tech Buyers Guru, and I will catch you next time.